Well, hello there, and welcome to the bathroom of the dollhouse, where all the big thinking gets done. For another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers for April 3rd, the day of the Fulcrum. That's right. And here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of the Fulcrum. We have what appears to be, what is it? Ooh, it looks to be a hand holding the brass or gold ring within another ring. That's right, a little bit of a droste effect there going on. Partial, anyhow. Does that speak to the day of the fulcrum? I don't know. A lot of times these visual representational images can be rather enigmatic, so I can't really necessarily make heads or tails of it, but not altogether all too important. And I say that because what is important around these here parts is April 3rd, and hence it's somebody's birthday. So if your birthday is April 3rd, I just want to say happy birthday. That's what's important around these here parts. That said, sometimes these videos find folks late, and if that's the case, well, I hope you had a happy birthday in that circumstance. That said, a lot of folks like to join us randomly or more ideally to celebrate, so if that's why you're here, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I kick off the redirect, something I like to do around these here parts, and that is roll some dice. That's right, this is the Diecast birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake. But if you've been here before and you know the score, well, just skip ahead in the chapters and get to the redirect. That's why they're there. That said, I'm going to be here rolling some dice, because I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled us a 5 and a 3, 4 and 8. Now, what is synchronicity if you haven't heard tell of it? Well, as I hear told, the powers that be will oftentimes put things in our path to help us manifest our goals or realize our aspirations. And so, a lot of the times as we're getting on in this life, we may not notice such things, all right? Because we're usually very narrow or singular of focus. Yeah, we may see the things crossing our path, but hey, maybe we don't lend them a lot of credence. But if the universe is putting things in our path, well, hey, wouldn't you like to see them, especially if they help you manifest your goals, realize your aspirations? I would think so. And so that's the goal here. But we need some kind of sign with which we helps us notice such things. That's right. Something mutually agreed upon between us and the universe. And that would be your daily numbers. That's right. So you don't have to go with the numbers I rolled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably advisable you take your own set of dice so you can ascribe directional values to number sets as well as time limits with which to go in those directions. That said, once you figure all that out, just pick out a place maybe near and dear to your heart or some place you haven't explored before and then set out. But like I said before, it's all about getting those blinders off, all right? Seeing the things going on around us. Because outside of your numbers creeping up into your day, hey, you might notice the day starts to take on a little bit of a theme. Hey, let's take the brass ring, for example, or any ring in general. Maybe they just start popping up in your environment there. Now, it doesn't have to be literal rings. Who's to say? You might just start to see advertisements for Zales, right? So the diamond rings and such. Or maybe you see a carousel in a park, all right? And hey, maybe they incorporated the brass ring back into it. Who's to say, all right? I'm just trying to say that such things might present into your environment. So you got to be eagle-eyed, see what's going on, take notice of such things, all right? That said, maybe you get after this first directional value time limit, maybe you're not seeing much of anything, all right? Just the everyday goings on. Well, never fret, just take a step back, compose yourself, look around. Maybe you notice something small like you're on, what's this? Oh, old 53rd Avenue or 8th Street, perhaps. That's right, your numbers crept into the situation there. And we just take that as a sign you're on the right path. And maybe the universe is busy cooking up things to put in your path. It just takes a little time for such things to line up. Maybe no sooner do you go to roll your dice again. Hey, what's this? Whoa, it's the number 8 bus rolling up. There you go. Hey, you doubted for a second. There it is. And maybe on the side of the bus, that's right, your theme of the day. It's an advertisement with a ring in the picture there. All right, another sign that you're on the right path. Hey, you know what? Maybe you should get on the bus, all right? Maybe you just so happen to have perfect change in your pocket to ride as well. And in a day and age when folks ain't necessarily carrying around pocket change, hey, there you go, another synchronicity. So you get on the bus, you ride it around there. Hey, maybe you don't like riding the bus, so you roll yourself your time value, see how long you need to stay on, right? And again, you roll yourself an 8 just to keep it simple, right? And maybe you look up, no sooner do you see somebody's wearing a jersey with the number 8 on it. There you go. Hey, in this particular circumstance, hey, maybe that's when you get off the bus, when that individual decides. Or maybe the bus isn't in the equation, all right? Maybe you just so happen to notice somebody who's wearing something out there in the world, right? And maybe it's like a interesting color, right? When outside in your environment, everybody else is wearing blasé colors, all right? I would take that as a sign that that's your white rabbit of sorts to follow. So, roll yourself a time value, find out how long to chase him down. Ostensibly, all right, you're not literally chasing anybody, but give them a little bit of a buffer, all right? You don't want them to notice that you're creeping on them, if you like, all right? But then when your time limit's up, let them go on their way, and there you go. Roll your dice again, see where to go. But let's say they notice that you're stalking them, right? All right, hey, you know what? In such circumstances, just show them your dice, maybe show them this video. Be transparent about what's going on. It's my birthday. I'm trying to shake things up. Let the universe show me what's in my path there. And you know what? Something crazy might happen. They might just tell you their birthday too. And there you go. They might be apt to join you because, hey, they want to have their hair blown back on their birthday as well. So maybe you just made a friend. Who's to say? I often like to use that example because crazier things could happen, though that seems pretty crazy. That said, just another synchronicity. I think you get the idea. Get out there, let the universe blow your hair back. Start stacking up coincidences or synchronicities. I think they're interchangeable, and you're apt to see why I bring it up. All right. So that said, you're here for your birthday read. Let's get into it. Your month is April, your day is the 3rd, your sign is 12 to 14 degrees, Aries, of the Aries II period specifically, first day of it, and your quality and element is Cardinal fire. Well, all right, April 3rd, the day of the Fulcrum. April 3 people manifest a strong desire to be indispensable to the life in which they find themselves. Quite naturally, they manage to be at the center of things, whether it be through their knowledge, talents, or social savvy. Ordering and controlling their environment, whether at home or work, is a very high priority with them. They usually accomplish this by directing those around them with a little verbal hullabaloo. Making their wishes known in a direct manner and expecting others to listen attentively. It is intolerable for those born on this day to be ignored, yet they prefer not to assume a dictatorial stance, and indeed can usually win others over in an easy manner through their highly natural appeal. And those born on this day have a strong intuitive understanding of human nature, particularly when it comes to the basics. And although they may at times see things simplistically, they do manage to get down to the root of the problem. And their outspokenness or bluntness can get them into hot water on occasion. But for the most part, others come to recognize and value the insights of those born on this day, as well as find their strong physical presence reassuring in times of need or danger. And April 3 people are quite capable of acting on their own in an independent fashion, but somehow it is their involvement in a group and social activities which takes up most of their energy, not uncommonly fueled by their strong need to be appreciated and to nurture, it says in parentheticals. And their power to bring together very diverse, even dissenting elements through the force of their personality is marked. However, they also have a tendency to play favorites and can create difficulties for themselves and others by fostering dependencies. And April 3 people tend to be good-natured but can be criticized as being naive. As a matter of fact, those born on this day often impress others as a curious blend of the childlike and the mature, the gullible and realistic, the selfish and responsible. They are capable of making tremendous errors of judgment, not uncommonly through a rigid application of their belief system, and yet because they lack malice will generally be readily forgiven by friends, family, or public admirers. One of the great challenges faced by April 3 people is to not get locked into one role in life, thus denying themselves the opportunity to develop further. They must be very careful that the pivotal position they occupy does not itself become the principal barrier to such evolutionary growth. Learning to say no to people and projects that are distracting or overly demanding of their attention, and cultivating the independence to strike out in new directions without feeling guilt are vitally important in this respect. Well, all right, pretty interesting, dynamic birthday reading today. What's interesting here is it totally bucked the conventions that kind of crept up during the Aries I period. Just left and right, up and down, it was similarities. I don't think I'd seen so many similarities between people and traits and in any other period in the book. And here I didn't see a lot of those things, so it was pretty interesting in that respect. I thought it was going to carry through in no small part. I think there was a couple hints at such things, which I'll get to here shortly, but by and large, completely novel new day for a new period. That said, I'd like to provide a little bit of a commentary on the things we just went over. Maybe strike up some similarities, like I said, in the period, but also the book at large, and things that I found interesting. So let's get into it, shall we? April 3, the day of the Fulcrum. You're said to manifest a strong desire to be indispensable to the world you either find yourself in or a part of, or that you choose to inhabit. The reading also claims that you will innately maneuver yourself to the center of your realm through all the faculties that you're in possession. To controlling your domain is claimed to be of the utmost importance to you. And like others in the period here, the Aries were at large, conveying your intentions is said to be done in as a direct a manner as possible. And it's also in a concise manner too. And while the reading claims to be ignored by you is intolerable, you're also said to be able to win others over with an easygoing manner that comes with a natural appeal. That's another similarity to a lot of the folks in the Aries period. But it's also a talent that I'd assume comes from your innate human understanding, which was also mentioned there in the breakdown, which then I would say extends to the likes of avoiding dictatorial tax that they mention there, which I would also assume may be quite the trick to navigate if you're also in the thick of controlling your environment and expecting deference for your station. All right, to be able to avoid being dictatorial, it's a huge ask in a lot of cases, especially if people aren't doing what you expect of them. So I'd say it makes sense, as the reading claims, that you may get yourself in the hot water as all these elements tend to mix, because there was just so many different dynamics in the mix here, I would argue. So some of them are bound to kind of not mix together correctly, or I don't know, conflict with each other, I would assume. All told, I'd completely agree that your presence may be found reassuring in times of need for all of these reasons also. I'm also assuming there'd appear to be an ideal balance between capability, dedicated resolve, and empathetic humanity baked into the bargain if what's been conveyed also applies. But interestingly, a tendency toward playing favorites is also mentioned, which, aside from the jealousy that may spawn from as much, I don't know that I would have guessed or considered that fostering dependencies would be baked into that particular bargain. But I guess it makes sense. But that said, it's also interesting that your good-natured personality can be seen as naive. All right, I guess it makes sense, but I just found it interesting that that's what they drilled down on there. For what I'm guessing is the reading's mention of a capacity to make errors in judgment due to your very dynamic nature. All right, but that said, a lot of folks are apt to forgive you for being naive or making bad decisions also, which another common trait for the Aries period, as it turns out. That said, altogether, not too surprising, I would say, especially if you have a modest affect. You understand the human natures a little bit. It's like an innate knowledge that you have. And what else to say? A cultivating ability to be able to, what do you say? Just take charge of such things in your environment. You know what? It's not necessarily something that's been brought up in this particular period here, so it might be a little bit of something new coming into Aries too. That said, I think it's the best approach to have. Being modest, unassuming about as much, and then just maybe being demanding when you have to be. I kind of seemed like that was in there a little bit. That said, that's what I had to say about the birthday breakdown there. Like I said, pretty interesting day. A lot of different dynamics going into it. Kept it very interesting to be sure. And like I said, very welcome that stuff's coming into it, because the whole Aries 1 period, it was just like traits were all the same, even though people took on different means of realizing them. So I was ready for something new, something more dynamic, and we certainly got it today. That said, that's been your birthday breakdown. Let's move on to your numbers and your planets. Here we go. A little bit of astrology for you here. Those born on the 3rd of the month are ruled by the number 3 in the expansive planet Jupiter. And those ruled by the number 3 often rise to prominent positions within their sphere. They also tend to be dictatorial. This is tempered somewhat in April 3 people who prefer that things around them run smoothly without having to give direct orders. Nonverbal communication, the power of suggestion, is their forte. Jupiter-Mars connection, to say Mars rules over Aries, underlies the April 3 need for independent thought as well as action. Well, all right, this one was a bit boilerplate here. They threw in a few things to shake things up, make it more tailored to you, but not a lot of stuff. And that's also been pretty interesting here, because Aries 1 shook up all the planetary dynamics. Everything that I would come to assume is baked in with each planet and how they interact with each other, totally bucked all those conventions. Here I would say this one was pretty straightforward. Why that is, I couldn't tell you. I still have no idea why Aries 1 was bucking convention left and right, and kind of turning all your preconceived notions of how this stuff's supposed to work on its head. But here it seems like it's kind of back to the tried and true model. That said, what did I have to say about your numbers and your planets? Let's get into it here. The number 3 in the expansive planet Jupiter for rising to the highest position in your sphere, but also a jovial, optimistic nature and an expansive philosophical view, as mentioned elsewhere in the book. And then you got Mars with its god of warlike energy and adventuresome nature, which generally lends to an examination into impulse versus intuition. And that's been coming up the past period here. I don't think it's mentioned anywhere else in the book, interestingly, or how to avoid emotion-based choices versus instincts. All right. So that's been a common examination. I would say it's baked in here too for you. Both Mars and Jupiter, by my read, impart a drive for success. But Mars is more on the attack versus Jupiter's focus on evolution, that philosophical outlook. Easygoing nature there, too, I would say. That said, the dictatorial nature here for you is said to be somewhat curbed, but for whatever reason, probably, again, advancing in Aries 2, the last Jupiter-ruled day that also had Mars in the mix, which was March 30th, it was strictly warned against this nature taking hold, this authoritarian dictatorial nature. Energies were much more volatile for them as well, for whatever reason. All told, this entry seems much more in line with the typical assumptions that go into these planetary energies, like I said. So it seems to make a lot more sense in respect to how they laid it out here for you. March 30, though, I have no idea why there was such a difference, even though the same dynamics existed. So that said, like I said, it's a little bit boilerplate with how they explain everything for you here in Numbers and Planets, but like I said, that's a little bit reassuring for me, because I didn't know how to interpret any of this stuff the past period. That's interesting in its own regard, but it also got a little old hat there too, because I'm like, we got to get back to basics. here we are. All right. That said, that's been your numbers and your planets. Let's move on to your tarot. That's right. One of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies, but it's here in the book. Just see what it has to say, and then we can leave it here and move on. Interestingly enough, though, a lot of times these things line up with the breakdown. And then Aries I period, a lot of times it's like they were keystone cards. They almost seem to inform the breakdown. So let's see if that's what happens here. But sometimes it doesn't. All right, we'll just have to see. Here we go. The third card of the major arcana is the Empress, symbolizing creative intelligence. She is the perfect woman, the ultra-feminine Mother Earth nurturer, who is our dreams made real, our hopes and aspirations embodied. This card represents positive traits of charm, grace, and unconditional love, and negative traits of vanity, affectation, and intolerance for imperfection. Well, all right, this one was boilerplate, all right? This one was a copy-paste job. Sometimes they'll button it with something to say, this stands as a glowing example of this particular person, and not necessarily that, but or an example to live up to more properly. That's right. That said, nothing here for you in that respect. Not altogether all too uncommon, but let's see if I can pick up a little bit of the slack or see how it fits into the scheme of things here. All right. The Empress, symbolizing creative intelligence and striving after the manifestation of one's dreams, or otherwise how to get people to do what you want without being ignored, I would say, in your case. All right. Also without being dictatorial. So, with creative intelligence, I would say that lines up. All right. They also have positive traits of charm and grace, and unconditional love as positives, which I would say right on its face you must have as well as employ, considering the dynamics that were conveyed in the breakdown. Complicated as they were, I would say that speaks to that. But which March 30, they got the same card. They didn't have that stuff, I would say. It didn't seem to apply at all. So very interesting it does for you. But considering the positives for them, those might have been more directed inwards. I'd say for you, it seems like maybe they're directed outwards. So kind of interesting there. Toward their dreams, if you like. For you, perhaps your cause, nurturing those folks with that Mother Earth energy, ostensibly. So I just say all that so you can understand just how different some of these individuals are, even though they have the same influences. So pretty interesting. That said, that's been your tarot. I would say for you, it fit very aptly. All right. But March 30, not at all, like I said. So in any event, that's been your tarot. Let's move on to your health. There we go. The health problems of April 3 people generally stem from them paying too much attention to those around them. These outwardly directed people must be reminded either by their family, physician, or friends that they are of no use to anyone unless their health is put forward. Or foremost, it says, rather. By nature, they tend to be as healthy and strong as a horse. Their problems, therefore, usually come only after years and years of neglect. A good appetite is a health asset for April 3 people. But a tendency to overindulge and thus gain weight should be controlled by an exercise regimen and reducing the fat content of the diet. Headaches and stress-related disorders can possibly be alleviated through regular outings and vacations in which others share the arrangements and responsibilities. That's right. You gots to delegate there. That's what I would take from it. That said, what I have to say about your health. Let's get into it here. They said health problems based on being too focused on other people's concerns. All right, that Mother Earth nurturer. Hey, it can be bad for you, apparently, which I don't necessarily recall that coming up this period, interestingly, but it has been in the book on occasion, so I would take note. We got to take care of ourselves, too, so that we can take care of others, all right? So despite being claimed that you're innately healthy, again, don't bank on it, all right? We got to be sure about it. May become a barrier too, that fact that you assume you're going to always be healthy, all right? So don't let that kind of hubris get in front of you, all right? Stay unassuming and modest and keep going forward. Stress, however, very common for this period to come up and affect people. Headaches, also issues with tooth decay have, interestingly enough, have been coming up for Aries. And I would say that's because the Aries body area is the head and the spine. I think it was the cerebellum. Just watch out for that tooth decay. That's part of it, apparently. What else do we have here? No exercise or diet recommendations came up for you. That's typically pretty boilerplate. They'll dive into that to fit the model of a typical health entry. But that kind of lines up with the Aries period. All right, there's too many dynamics in there to really make sense of it, I would argue. Here again, that kind of ties in with Aries 1. Surprisingly, I thought they were going to, again, kind of get back to convention, but there you go, another similarity with Aries 1. Mars typically gets very vigorous exercise, ostensibly to excise their god of warlike energy. Last period didn't come up all that often, very interestingly enough. They did, however, say to avoid it on some occasions because a lot of times Aries folks get after things with such dedication they were apt to hurt themselves if they did go vigorous. So, with the exercise there. So that's kind of why they warned against it. That said, Jupiter, a little bit more reserved, I would say, not at least by my interpretation of what I've read in the book. So probably takes the vigorous down also. That said, you can handle it, I would say, based on everything else that's come up with Mars days. So if you do want to go vigorous, just mind you take care of yourself. Don't go too crazy with it. Mars days also would get combative sports there. And I know this isn't a Mars day, it's a Jupiter day, but Mars is in the mix, so you still got that going for you. That said, pretty common aspects here for the book writ large, but not for the period as far as a health entry is concerned. So pretty interesting. That said, that's been your health, so let's move on to some advice. All right, let's get some advice going. Don't be so dependent on the approval of others, nor possessed with serving them. Find your inner values, guard your spirit, and develop your hidden talents. Curb the desire to control those you live with, and learn to back off and just disappear sometimes. All right. Pretty interesting advice here. I would say that this stuff hasn't really come up this period. Did that apply to you? Who's to say? Let's dive into what I had to say about what they had to say. All right. They said, don't be dependent on the approval of others. Cause of undue stress, I would assume. Not good for your mental state. Taking care of and helping others, that's a huge thing, I would say, but not at the cost of your own personal welfare. How are you supposed to then continue on in your endeavor if you're not at the top of your game? All right, so we got to make sure there's a balance there. And balance, being measured, also cultivating self-awareness, all these things are through-line themes for the book, and I would say that applies here, even though they didn't directly mention it. What else did they say here? So help other people by helping yourself, I think, is the takeaway there. Also, they said find inner values, guard your spirit, develop your talents. I would say in the same vein, don't let your magic get compromised, all right? Especially by yourself. Those barriers they talked about in front of you. Specifically with the health, but that can be realized in a variety of ways. Yeah, so don't sacrifice your magic, all right? They said curb your desire to control those in your life and learn to back off and sometimes disappear. And I would say this lines up with some other things that come up in the book and the advice that they give. The things I have to say is sometimes that there's a person in the relationship who kind of takes a back seat, a more supportive role. And in a lot of cases, they get overshadowed, and hey, there might be a little bit of resentment that kind of comes up with that because the other person, ostensibly you, is getting all the focus, all the attention. Aries II period is the period represented by the star, the person who gets all the attention. And so in such cases, the idea is to take a step back and maybe let the other person shine for a little while, all right? So that their talents can come to the fore. Who's to say? It might just bolster your own, all right? And do like a team collaborative effort. I don't know, but the point is they need their time too. So take a little time away, and it's a perfect time to recharge your batteries, see what you see, all right? Cultivate a little bit of what do you call it, mutually or mutual trust there with that individual because you gave them their time. All right, and you're nurturing, so I would say it's probably baked into the bargain. Pretty easy for you to do, even if you hadn't considered it before. So in any event, that's what I had to say about what they had to say. So let's move on to your meditation. That's right. It's your birthday. You get something to think about. All right, here we go. The chicken is the egg's way of reproducing itself. All right, I would say that is a meditation. That's right. Once again, the chicken is the egg's way of reproducing itself. All right. Don't know what to think about that one, but hey, even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. All right, it's your birthday, your meditation. I don't want to influence it for you one way or the other. But kind of defeat the purpose. That said, your meditation in a can. Let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's see where you got the girth and we otherwise maybe a little more atrophied. That's right. Your strengths. You're good-natured, you're unassuming, and you're fun-loving. Interesting. I don't think I've seen two of those before. But your weaknesses, oh, what could these be? Your weaknesses. You're demanding. Interesting. You're also self-centered and naive. Oh, you know what? I think we saw all of these, maybe in little small parts, but they were there. You know, that said, a lot of times I like to say our strengths are going to help us overcome our weaknesses, all right? A lot of times, too, though, I like to say our weaknesses can also be strengths, just depending upon the situation and how we use them. So let's try to make a case here today from my argument there. Your strengths, how can those be used to improve upon your weaknesses? You're good-natured, unassuming, you're fun-loving. You know what? Enthusiasm came up all the past period, a lot of the days there, and I would say that's huge, instrumental. I would say fun-loving is in there too. If we know we've got something we need to improve upon and you're approaching it with a jovial Jupiter kind of energy, hey, you know what? You're going to have some fun improving on yourself. Boom. Well, you can't ask for more, all right? Because you're going to get after it and you're going to keep getting after it. And you're going to be positive about it, all right? Huge. Unassuming, you're modest, you're approaching things with a down-to-earth kind of approach, all right? And I would say that's a huge strength because people are drawn into it. There's a certain charm in it, all right? That innate human understanding, they said. Also a creative intelligence, I would argue, all right? And I would say, how is that going to be used to help you improve your weaknesses? Well, hey, sometimes we need help with such things. And I would say people are bound to rally behind you if you need the help because you're unassuming. You're not necessarily going to ask for help unless you really need it. And hey, I'm sure they're in your court because you're a modest individual. They're going to help you out. So I would say that that's a huge strength in that respect. Also good-natured, all right? Same kind of vein, all right? People are going to be attracted to you because you've got that positive orientation. It's not ill-willed, ill-mannered. You know what? They know you're a salt-of-the-earth kind of individual. They're going to come to your aid. Also good-natured, turn that inward like that March 30 person who's very turned inward there, all right? Good-natured towards yourself. That's huge. Got to be healthy. We got to treat ourselves right, okay? That dovetails in with the weaknesses now, doesn't it? The self-centered, all right? How can that be a strength? Well, again, we're taking care of ourselves, okay? Because we have to. It's important we're taking care of ourselves so that, in your case, you can help others at the top of your game. I see how it's a weakness. A lot of times it's a bad look. You're too self-centered. But as I like to say, you got to be selflessly selfish sometimes. Take care of yourself. Focus on the things that are important to you so that you're in a good personal mind space, all right? Some people are just always dedicating their time to other people, and then they kind of fall by the wayside. And hey, that can breed resentment, which is a poison, all right? So I can see how self-centered's a weakness, but also a strength. You're going to take care of yourself. You have the capacity to do so. What else do we have here? Demanding. How can demanding be a strength? I would say in a lot of cases, hey, you know what needs to get done. It says you're like the master of your environment. So you understand what needs to be done to keep things on the track. You're also apt to go toward reaching the highest position of your sphere, they said. Hey, that takes a little bit of demanding nature there, all right? But if you're modest and assuming, good-natured, fun-loving, I'm sure you know how to navigate that in a diplomatic manner and you're not leaving people in the lurch. You're making them feel out of place. Sometimes you got to ostensibly crack the whip, let them know we mean business in certain circumstances. And I would say you know how to do that. But again, it can be a bad look. And if it gets too out of control, that authoritarian dictatorial nature probably takes hold. And then you got people who, they're, what do you call it? Antagonists, all right? Huge through line theme for the Aries I period. Everybody was arousing antagonisms in everyone, even the people who were good natured, aloof, cool, collected, had tons of friends. Ostensibly, it was because they were so cool and collected. A little bit of jealousy baked in there with the antagonists, all right? So, again, demanding, you just gotta know how to use it, all right, so that it's a strength. A lot of times, too, some people are too fickle or too apprehensive to be demanding. And then the things that need to get done aren't getting done. They're walking around on eggshells, too shy about letting folks know what has to get done. So I'd say demanding is good in that, as a strength in that respect, because you're gonna say what needs to get done. Sometimes it's needed. Also said you're naive. All right, yeah, I could see how that would be a weakness. How can it be a strength? All right, you've got that childlike nature, that wonder, that curiosity. And you know what? Curiosity breeds motivation, fun loving. It breeds all your strengths, I would say. But we also may not see a lot of the things going on around us or understanding them for what they really are. So in that respect, I can see it as a weakness, but as a strength, you know what? It's going to captivate other people's, make you endearing to them. And so it's a strength in those regards. They know you're salt of the earth, kind of aloof, not knowing what's going on. You know what? They're going to forgive you of it a little bit, I would say, too, there. So it's like an innocent, unassuming nature. It's huge, but it can also be a weakness in certain more true to life, realistic aspects there. So might be a little bit of a deficit, but again, I think you'd be just fine. Just make sure you're aware of as much. Maybe when you're being too naive about such things. That said, I think you get the idea, the argument I had to make for as much. I don't know if it was any good. I made a good argument, but you get the idea, all right? Turn your weaknesses into strengths, all right? That said, if you want to improve upon your weaknesses, I would say don't get rid of them altogether because they're a big part of what makes you who you are, all right? That said, your strengths and weaknesses having been conveyed, let's move on to those born on this day. And when we get into those born on this day, something I like to do is look at it from the perspective of figuring out all passions. Yeah, it's interesting to see who shares your company and why they're in the book, but all too often I get out in the world and meet folks and ask them what they do, more importantly, if they like it. And a lot of times they don't. And I think it's just because they don't have a purpose in this life, something to chase after. And so I think this is the perfect opportunity to maybe drum up some inspiration and see what other folks have done to, put their place on the map, if you like, so that we can start thinking about that with ourselves. Because I think it's huge and important that we're jumping out of bed in the morning doing backflips to get on with our day. And hopefully, if anything, this can serve as an example to start stirring up the fires, to get after some passions, all right? So let's keep that in mind as we see who shares your company. Those born on this day. We start off with Jane Goodall, the wildlife researcher, and spent years observing and living amongst chimpanzees, and was a writer of The Shadow of Man and Chimpanzees of Goombay. We also have Marlon Brando, the film actor of The Godfather fame, and also Apocalypse Now, I believe. We also have Washington Irving, a 19th century short story writer, responsible for Rip Van Winkle and The Headless Horseman. We also have Eddie Murphy, the comedian and a film actor. We also have Doris Day, the singer and film actress. Henry R. Luce, says a Time Life publisher. We also have Richard II, or Richard II, perhaps more properly, a British 14th century king and quelled the peasants' revolt. Probably saying that wrong, but the apostrophe's at the end. All right, what else we have here? Missing my place. We have William Marcy Boss Tweed, a New York City 19th century Tammany Hall politician. It says he ruled over the city for over a decade and milked millions of dollars through public works. Died in prison. All right, sometimes we got to take the good with the bad. You got to see where things can go, all right? So take that as an example of who not to be, all right? So what else do we have here? We have Alec Baldwin, stage and film actor. We also have George Herbert, a British metaphysical poet. We also have Scott LaFaro, a jazz bassist, and it says killed in a tragic auto accident at the age of 25. Sometimes they'll mention when folks were taken early or when they lived real late. We also have Leslie Howard, a British film actor, Marcia Mason, film actress, Helmut Kohl, a German chancellor, and it says affected the German reunification. We also have George Jessel, a comedian, John Burroughs, a naturalist writer. We also have Willem van Eden, a utopian naturalist writer, another one. They called him the Dutch Thoreau. We also have Gus Grissom, the U.S. astronaut. He was in the Gemini and the Apollo program, though Apollo 1 blew up on the pads, and he was part of that, unfortunately. We also have Daisy Ashford, the British author, and wrote The Young Visitors at age 9. And we finally have Miyoshi Umakiya. I'm probably saying that wrong, a Japanese actress. That said, I'm sure I butchered a few names now that I mention it. So let's make up for it on my side of things. It's not done in malice. It's just hooked on phonics. Doesn't often work for me with the names and words at large there in a lot of respects. That said, I know it's a big-ass tall order to take inspiration from other people's accomplishments, but hey, like I said, maybe just putting the bug in your ear about chasing after a passion gets you to start stirring up the fires for yourself. Start thinking about it, all right? Because it takes time and energy to start figuring out those things for ourselves. And I would argue a lot of times that's why people don't do it. They just do the simple thing like rolling out of bed, going to work, punching a clock. But is that fulfilling? Maybe not. So let's evolve, I would say, all right? At least that's what we can wish for ourselves. And me for you on your birthday. That said, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading, except to say, once your season is spring. Once again, your zodiac sign is Aries, of the Aries II period specifically. And your quality and element is Cardinal fire. And this has been April 3rd, the day of the Fulcrum. Don't know that we made any sense of the brass ring visual representational image, but like I said, here nor there. Just use that as inspiration to look for out there as you go on a synchronicity walk. Ostensibly. That said, this has been The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Used Elfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description if you're interested in picking up yourself a copy. It's one of the most interesting books that has come across my path, and I would say it's going to make an excellent coffee table book for you if you're interested in such a thing. Maybe break it out at parties to help you break the ice. I'm sure you can do that just fine yourself, but hey, you know what? You need to take care of yourself, like they said, right? So take some heavy lifting off your shoulders once in a while. Let the book do it, and folks are bound to leave the party thinking that was pretty interesting, whether the birthdays line up or not, all right? That said, book having been related, you get the point. It's not altogether all too important, because like I said at the top, what's important around here? Wishing you a happy birthday. So once again, happy birthday, all right? I put together a little personal message for the birthday boys and girls there. It's under the affiliate link in the description, so give that a look if you're interested. But for everybody else who joined us today, ostensibly to celebrate, hopefully, you know what? I just want to say I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and we see you for your birthday reading. That said, I just want to thank everybody for the pleasure of your time, and for the birthday boys and girls, I just want to say it was a privilege to celebrate your birthday with you. So once again, happy birthday. Take care of yourselves. Stay creatively intelligent, all right? Don't get authoritarian. Watch out for those antagonists, even though I didn't really mention them in there for you, because I would say that's a through-line theme for the period if we were picking up on that particular theme. But once again, most importantly, happy birthday, all right? Take care of yourselves.